Welcome to the Car Flip Show. My name is Justin Carper. I was a part-time flipper turned used car dealer, and each week I'll be providing information on how you can flip cars as well. Thanks for spending some time with me today. Now let's get into the episode. This is episode 3 of the Car Flip Show. We're going to be looking at two things in particular today. One of those is a question from Harold on Facebook. We'll get to that in a moment. The first thing we're going to look at is the exact jump box that I use here at my car dealership. I had it before I was selling cars from a dealership. A very handy thing to have if you're not familiar with the term jump box. We'll get into what that is and the uses for it, as well as the question from Harold. His question, it was a pretty lengthy question, so I'm going to shorten it and have it a little more concise. But for those of you looking to submit questions, I don't care how long they are. It's just a matter of getting those to me. So this one was submitted on Facebook. If you would like to submit a question on Facebook, you're going to go to facebook.com/thecarflip. That'll take you to our Facebook page. We post pretty much all of our content there. So any of the daily flip, that's a YouTube show. We just go over what I'm doing daily, as well as the podcast. A lot of things get thrown in there. So if you would like to connect with me, there's a link there where you can click to send me a message. That's what Harold did. So I got his message on Facebook. I went through it and actually commented back and said, hey, I didn't have time to actually answer it right then. So I said, I'm going to answer this in episode 3 of the Car Flip Show. So if you would like for your question to be answered in an upcoming show, whether it's Facebook, whether it's YouTube, whether it's emailing me at justin@thecarflip.com, whatever's best for you, send me your question and we'll try to get it in an upcoming episode. But his question, it was lengthy, basically consisted of this: what did you do to get to where you are? So in a flipping context, we know you started. We went over a couple weeks ago where I started out buying the 73 Volkswagen Beetle that caught on fire, and then I still made $1,000. I think that was episode 1 if you want to go back and check out that story. But so how did I get from there to where I'm at right now, actually having a car dealership? And then he had some sub questions, which basically were, how did you get to having a mechanic? How did you know what to pay him? What tools did you have starting out? Or he didn't ask that specifically, but basically, how did you get to a point having all the tools and equipment that you have right now, such as a lift? And just, if I was to take you in my shop right now, which we might do in the future in a daily flip, just walk you through and show you the stuff that I've got. I've accumulated a lot over time, but you don't have to have everything that I have to get started, and I'll get into why here in just a moment. But let's start out first with the jump box that I use. A jump box, actually, for those of you that are watching this on YouTube, the only difference on this show that you're going to have over the people on the podcast is I'm just going to hold up this jump box really quick and just show you what it looks like. So the YouTube show and the podcast version are the exact same. The only thing you get on YouTube is you get to see me talking into the camera, and then right now holding up this jump box. It's a little bit heavy right now, actually. I'm going to put this down. Throw this over there. Oh, you probably heard that big bang on the podcast. I'm very sorry. We'll have a link in the podcast to the jump box that I just held up and showed. All it is basically a rechargeable battery, similar to a car battery. It's just in a a type of box that you can carry around. It's got a handle. This is a jump and carry 770 or 770R. You could go with a different jump and carry model, such as the 660. They have the same power as far as I know, as far as the volts and the amperage and everything. But I like the 770 because it has longer cables. The cables on it actually allow you to sit the jump box if you want to on the ground and still reach the battery terminal in the vehicle. So if, for example, you put the jump box inside the engine compartment, you didn't secure it properly and it fell over on maybe one of the belts or something. I've had that happen once. I didn't do it, but at a dealership that I ran with my dad, which I'm going to get to in a moment on how I got to where I'm at, how I ended up there. But when our mechanic started the car, didn't realize the jump box had fell over. He started smelling, smoke. Nothing caught on fire, but it was basically the belt, one of the pulleys on one of the belts was burning into the plastic on the jump box. It didn't make it where we couldn't use it. There was just a big hole in the jump box. So you don't want to do that. So if you can't find somewhere good to put it, this one's handy because you can put it on the ground. The cables are long enough. They actually have an angled clip where you're clipping onto the battery. The little handle has an angled terminal as opposed to the other one not. Not really that big a deal. The only reason I have the 770 is because our 660, the jump and carry 660, was stolen, and it was really our fault. We left it outside overnight, came in the next morning, and it was gone. So kind of figures we're on a busy road here right outside of downtown Raleigh. So someone walked by at night, stole it. Our fault. We shouldn't have left it outside. But instead of buying the exact same one, I felt bad. I was like, okay, I'm spending the, whatever, how $100, and I'm going to have, the exact same one. So I upgraded. So I felt like I was at least getting something for my money. And I really like this one. It's got a digital readout on the front that tells you what your battery, your alternator is charging at. So it's handy to have. It's a real quick check if you want to check your alternator if you don't have a individual checker to check that type of thing. So we'll put a link below. We did a YouTube video, kind of a review or a how to use this jump box. So you can look at that. If you want to see it in person, see me using it, and I'll talk a little more in that video about that. That's a YouTube link you can find in the show notes at thecarflipshow.com. Go to episode 3. You'll see it there. So that's the jump box. That's what it is. The uses for it, obviously, if you have a dead battery, happens a lot when you have multiple cars sitting around a lot like I do. So we've got right now 8, 9, 10 cars out for sale. And there's probably that many, if not more, cars that are sitting around that haven't got the attention of look over by my mechanic. We've got 5 or 6 in the back that just have bigger thing. Like a couple need an engine, one needs a timing belt, one has a battery draw that just the battery goes down to 0 overnight. We got to figure that out. So when we go out to pull those cars out, a lot of times the battery is dead. So instead of having to pull a vehicle in front of it, take the jumper cables out, hook to one, hook to the other, jump it off, we just take this box out there, you set the box down, you turn the box on, you hook the cables from the box to the battery, and it's going to jump it off. You're going to be good to go. These are very handy if you're going on vacation. There's nothing worse. Actually, speaking of vacation, I'm leaving today, which if you're hearing this, this is on Friday. I'm recording this on Monday of this week that we're in now. So I'm in the future on the podcast. Right now I'm in the present, which is Monday. Tomorrow on Tuesday, I'm leaving to go on vacation to Pennsylvania. My grandparents actually know some Amish people up there, so we're going to hang out with them. Really cool experience for my kids. They get to go up there. They ride the ponies. They last time they gave us a ride in their horse and buggy, took us into town. It's a really cool thing. But if we were up in Pennsylvania, our battery died. Number one, if we're there at the Amish people's house, they're not going to be able to jump us off because they don't have a car. Technically, this is a whole nother story. They actually do have a car, but they can't drive it. And last time we were there, I got to drive the Amish people's car. That's a whole nother story for another day. But they wouldn't be much help because they probably don't even have jumper cables. So if you're on vacation, you have a jump box, you have a dead battery, you just hook it up, jump off your car, you're good to go. Another useful reason to have it is if you ever have a car that has a bad alternator and you need to transport it with a bad alternator, if your battery is dead as well, there's going to be no power to run the vehicle. So the way a vehicle works, when you start your car, it uses the battery. After it's started, the alternator takes over and supplies the power. So if both your battery is bad, which if you have a bad alternator, it would have drained that. So you would end up not being able to drive a vehicle. So if you have a jump box, a lot of times you can hook to the terminals with the cables, start the car, and you can tuck in the jump box somewhere in the engine compartment and get the hood shut. Then you can actually drive somewhere for a limited amount of time using the power out of the jump box to run the electronics on the vehicle. So that's the jump box. That's the Jump and Carry 770R. We'll have a link to that on Amazon that you can check that out. If you do buy it, I think I have to mention this, is that we do receive a small commission on that sale. It doesn't cost you any extra, but it helps facilitate this show and the cost and the expenses for the mics and the cameras and all that good stuff. If you were there on Amazon, if you click that link, you also could search while you're there the Jump and Carry 660R. It's the exact same power, and it's just a little bit cheaper. So one's blue, the 660R is blue, the 770 is red. I have the red one. Really handy tool to have. If you're going to be flipping cars, at some point, you're going to want to make that investment. So those are the ones I use. Now we're going to get into our question from Harold. His question essentially was, how did you get to where you are in regards to flipping? So like I mentioned earlier, we told the story of the Volkswagen. First time I ever made any money flipping a car, made $1,000. From there, I just continued to flip. I did several vehicles. A couple of my early vehicles were a Lincoln Mark 8. If you're not familiar with that, it was kind of Lincoln's first sports car. And I say first sports car. I'm sure they had them several in the past, but this was a two-door sports car, one of the most recent sports cars that they had. It was basically built off of a similar platform as the Mustang, had the 4.6 liter, same engine the Mustang had. It was a really neat car. And the inside, had leather interior. I think the first one I bought needed a headliner. Actually pulled one out of a junkyard. We replaced the headliner. When you turned it off, if it sat too long, like if it sat for 2 days, the air shocks in the front would leak down. The whole front end of the car would just sit down, and then when you started it, the front end would raise up. So that was a pretty common thing on those. A lot of people eventually retrofitted, and so they took out the air and put normal struts and shocks on them. I didn't. I sold it how it was, and I just told the guy, I was like, look, you let it sit for 2 days. The front's going to lower down. It raises back up. I kind of tried to sell it as it's really neat. It looks really cool when it raises up. Either way, it was like I don't know, I sold it for like $2,700 or something. I don't remember the numbers of what I paid for it, but I know I made like $1,300 or $1,400, which was a big deal because I just made $1,000. I made another $1,300, $1,400, so I'd already got all my initial, investment back, and everything else was profit. So it was awesome. From there, I went from having one car to having 2 cars. At the time, I was working at Chick-fil-A. This is high school, so I'm working at Chick-fil-A. I got to the summer where they were going to increase my hours because I've been working during school, and I started to think about it, and I was like, okay, I'm working, and the math in my head's a little fuzzy. I was making like $7 an hour at the time, which minimum wage was like $6.25. They paid us $7 an hour, which I thought was, seemed awesome at the time. I was making above minimum wage. So I started calculating out. I'd been working 20 hours a week during school. They were going to take me like $30, or not 30 hours a week during the summer. I started adding that up, 30 times 7, that's $210 a week. They paid you bi-weekly, so that means 210. That would be $420 every 2 weeks, and then you have taxes that come out of that. So I was going to be getting like $325, I guess, or so to work for those 2 weeks, which took up a lot of my time from flipping. And so I started to just do basic math. I'm thinking, okay, if I sell a car, I can make $1,000, $1,200, $1,500 selling that one car. I can work a whole month and not hardly make that. So I ended up quitting Chick-fil-A. I wouldn't say I went flipping full time because I was in high school. I didn't have any bills. So everything I made was gravy. I mean, when you make $1,000 when you don't have any bills in high school, I mean, that's the biggest, bang for your buck you can get. So I was flipping cars in high school. I did one at a time. I actually would take these cars. I would park them in front of a Kmart in Shelby, North Carolina. If you've ever ridden through Shelby, Highway 74, there's a Kmart that actually is closing right now. It's right across from a Walmart, which was also across from the Chick-fil-A that I worked at. So I'd park cars there. I was the first person to start parking them there, and then before long, there was like 6 cars out in front of this Kmart. Actually got to a point where the owner of the Kmart called the people, and we had to move the cars because there were too many people. But I went from doing one at a time to then I would have 2, and then my dad and I had been talking for the longest time about starting a used car dealership, but he wanted me to graduate college first. So I did. I graduated, got my 4-year degree, marketing major, or I guess that was my major. I was a political science minor, which I've not really used either of those because I have done my own thing. I guess I've used the business part of it a little bit, but so we started a dealership in Shelby. Started out, we were just going to be auto sales, and then we ended up branching off a little bit into automotive repair. That portion of it I was not as excited about because that meant that I was going to be the automotive repair guy because it was my dad, myself, and my brother. So I would go into the shop. We'd get a vehicle in that needed an alternator. I had no idea what I was doing. The car would come in, and my dad would say, do this, this, and this, and I would do those things, and then he would just, teach me the rest of the way through it. Those things actually did become very valuable for me, knowing those things, knowing how the engine operates, knowing how to do the basic things, not because I do them now, which I do every now and then, but when you have a mechanic on staff, it's nice to understand at least the basics so you can at least converse. And I'm more of a logical person, so I can think through things logically and use Google and other solutions that people have come to on vehicles. So he's using the technical side, I'm using the logical side. Sometimes we can come together and find a solution for a vehicle. So went there. I actually stayed there from 2009, 2010 through 2000, I believe 15. I was there about 5 years. I ran the dealership with him. Eventually I got to the point where what I was doing every day wasn't what I wanted to be doing long term. I knew in 5 years I didn't want to be in the same place, which basically was running my dad's business. I had no equity in the business. I was there from, building the actual business, but none of my money was invested in the actual business. This is my dad building the business. For me, it was an awesome learning experience. At some point down the road, it would have been my business. He would have handed it over and it would have been mine. But I don't know, just that didn't feel right. That wasn't something that I really wanted, was for someone to hand me a business. And on top of that, my dad's pretty young. He's only 50 years old. So it would have been another 15, 20 years. I mean, he enjoys what he does just like I do. And I didn't want that animosity to grow because I really was starting to get to the point where I didn't enjoy interacting every single day, running the repair side, being the sales guy. I was kind of very involved in all of the day-to-day operations. And I knew that I could do that on my own, and I knew the profit, and I knew what we were making on the cars. So it wasn't something to where I wanted what my dad had, and I was jealous of it, but it was something that I wanted to do the same thing, but I didn't want to be my dad's competition. So I didn't want to actually, start a dealership right across the street, and I wanted to kind of do my own thing. So I actually made the decision to leave the family business. My wife's family lives in Wilmington, North Carolina, which is on the coast of North Carolina. Shelby is kind of on the western side. So we just started thinking about where we wanted to be, and right in the middle, almost between those, is Raleigh, North Carolina. So it actually seemed like a good middle ground. We talked about it in the past of thinking it would be a neat place to live. So we sold our house, which actually sold a lot faster than we thought. So we ended up moving a lot faster than we thought. So we found a house, moved in, and that's when I just started flipping, because that's what I knew how to do. So we started out, again, it was like I was back in high school. I had one car in the driveway, then there was two, then there was seven. And so as I was going through those cars, a lot of them ended up being Jeep Wranglers, because I knew Jeep Wranglers. I enjoyed them. They were a lot of fun, and they're really easy to sell. That means they're a little harder to buy, but I had all the time in the world because I could spend all day looking for vehicles. So did very well at that. But at some point, my wife got tired of trying to weave through the driveway when there were seven cars. I mean, there were cars in the backyard, there were cars behind the house, there were cars in front of the house. At this point is when I was really kind of starting to get into thecarflip.com. So there's actually a few early videos at that house. So there's, I think, one in my front yard where I'm spraying carpet in my wife's Porsche. There's a few things that I'm doing there in the driveway. That's when, I was taking that knowledge, because I had a lot more free time, that I wasn't at my dad's car dealership all day long. And I started to put more into this website, which is where the idea of a podcast was kind of born there in the driveway, but we didn't actually start till just a couple weeks ago. But as I'm there, I'm buying and selling, I'm doing very well. But I start to think, I enjoy this, but, my wife doesn't like the cars in the driveway. At some point, my time is limited. So there's a certain amount of cars that I can do and do well. So the dealership idea started to come into focus, and then I started looking around at locations, and it was very difficult to find a location in Raleigh. But actually, a friend of mine knew of a dealership right outside of downtown. I mean, it was literally I don't know, I could be to downtown in 2 minutes in my car. He knew that it was coming available. It hadn't been advertised. He texted me, and initially I told him no. I was like, that's way too much money. I don't want to spend $2,500 a month just for a location. In North Carolina, you have to have a physical location that is approved by zoning as well as DMV for it to qualify as a dealership location. And $2,500 sounded like more money than I wanted to invest. I mean, if you do the math on that, that's this is rough math. What's that? Close to $30,000 just in that, money that you have to make a year to pay for that. So I thought about it for, about a week. I texted him and said, hey, do you think it's still available? He said it was. I locked that down. I went in and talked to the guy, gave him the cash up front and said, we're going to do it. So from there, I had to make a few phone calls to line up insurance, to line up a bond. I had to take the DMV class. I had to have zoning come by and reapprove it. It had been a dealership, and they just had to reapprove it. DMV came out and basically gave me thumbs up, said the location's good. So after I went through the class, paid for the insurance. Insurance is roughly $2,400 a year. The bond is, I think, $300 a year. The bond is based on your credit. Those things I just mentioned are essentially what you have to have a dealership, at least here in North Carolina. From state to state, it can vary a little bit, but that's pretty much what you would need there. So after that, it was just a matter of filling up the lot with cars. And this is very Cliff Notes version of how that happened. But so we get cars on the front line. A mechanic that I had actually used part-time, or not part-time, I'd use them on a job-by-job basis, actually had just quit at a garage about 20 minutes away. So that was a conversation that we had, and I said, hey, I know what you were doing there. I know you were working limited hours because you want to do some other stuff on the side. So we agreed on a time frame that he would be here at my location, which as of right now, he's here full-time 4 days a week. So he's here 9 hours, 4 days. We're on a salary set up here, and I don't want to get into numbers on that because that's not fair for him to me to be disclosing his salary. But he's here full-time. So if you're just getting started out, you don't have to have that. As I'm speaking right now, I actually have Rob is here, and I have another mechanic that's here working on a job that is on a per job basis. We're at a point to where we have a job that I don't have time to finish. So he is here doing that job here. He charges, it varies by the job. It would be anywhere from $30 to $50 an hour per job. So he's going to pull up all data, whatever the job calls for. That's $30 to $50, just depending. A lot of the stuff he does for me is around $30 an hour, just because I don't know, we've got a good relationship and he's a good guy and he helps me out, and we like to send him a lot of work as well. So most mechanics are going to charge you by the hour. If you're just starting out, you probably don't need someone full time. For me, I knew that I was going to have the workload. I knew that, you know, what I was going to buy initially, I was going to have a good month's worth of work just with cars that I had right then, just on time. We had one that needed a timing chain, one that we just had a lot of stuff. So I knew that I was going to have enough to keep him busy. You probably wouldn't have enough to keep someone busy right off the bat. So finding a good, reliable mechanic that will be honest with you and that will charge you a fair rate up front. Just remember, it's up to you what you buy. It's up to you what problems you buy. So if you can go through and weed out potential issues, that's the less money you have to pay to a mechanic. So just be careful when you're buying if you don't have a mechanic set up, because any issues that you inherit with vehicles that you buy are things you have to address. So that's essentially how I got here. So from there, we've been here at this location a little over 2.5 years. It's grown well. Business has been great. Car sales have continued to increase year over year, and the profits have stayed the same. So I was making, you know, that $2,000 per vehicle average has, you know, transferred here from flipping on the side to flipping full time. Now there's a lot more expenses here. We have to pay for the lights, we have to pay for the water, we have to pay, obviously I mentioned insurance, the bond, the internet is more expensive here just because of commercial rate. It's like it's ridiculous, like $150 a month because we want the fast internet. There's several expenses that you will entail if you go the dealership route. If you're just starting out, if you've never flipped anything, if you flipped 3 cars and you're thinking about going the dealership route, you really need to evaluate if those expenses are worth it. For me, it gives me the flexibility of being able to scale this. So if you're wanting to scale the business, the dealership route is going to be the way to go, because I've got a mechanic here. So when I bring something in, it goes through the mechanic. And so when the mechanic takes care of everything, then it gets detailed. I have a detail guy that comes in on Saturday. That makes me the sales guy and it makes me the buyer, and I also have to deal with the customers and everything that entails. But if you're wanting to scale the business, the dealership route is the way to go. And what we talked about before, those steps, the different things that you're going to have from being approved by DMV, zoning, having a location, those things you're going to have to figure out what your state requires. But for me, that's where I came from, flipping one at a time as a teenager to, even running the dealership with my dad. I was buying and selling cars on the side out of my driveway. Then left that dealership, sold full time out of my driveway. And then here, actually, we named this business Driveway. We've sold here as the dealership model. So I've done a little bit of both. I like the scalability of the dealership because eventually I'll be able to replace myself. So when I get to a point to where I don't want to be here on a daily basis, it's hiring someone to do the sales and the front end office work. And then I would just be the buyer. And eventually I guess I could phase out of that. But I really enjoy what I do. I don't anticipate leaving this role as the front end or the front office person because I enjoy interacting with customers. I enjoy this part of the business, the turning wrenches, the vacuuming floors and all of that. Not so much, especially right now. It's starting to get a little warm out. It's going to be 79 degrees today, which isn't hot, but when you throw in North Carolina humidity and it gets up to 87 to 94, it's not so fun. So that, in a nutshell, is how I got to where I'm at. If you have any follow-up questions, feel free to let me know. Otherwise, that's all for this Flip Friday. If you have any questions that I can answer for another car flip show, definitely wherever's best for you, whether it's Facebook, Google, you want to email me. Again, that's justin@thecarflip.com. I would love to work one of those into a future episode. Otherwise, I will see you guys next week in episode number 4.